Birds come from. Okay, good morning to all of you. And you can see that the subject today is a lovely one. And it's so interesting for me going back to the original Rave Anatomy text and seeing where my priorities were at that time. After all, it was put together in the early 90s, and it was really in laying it out. I was laying out, the basic infrastructure of how I would teach people the nature of the body graph. And the moment that you look at that, you have to see that it is about the throat center. And the throat center is really one of these fantastic things in the body graph. In the early days, I described it as Rome, in the sense of the saying that all roads lead to Rome. When you look at the throat center is a real hub of the body graph. Manifestation, and I don't mean manifestors. Everything about life is about life manifesting on this plane. And the whole theme of manifestation, everything we understand about manifestation, we find here in this throat center. And yet the throat center is so different from all the other centers. It really is. It's very, very different. It's different in a couple of ways. The first thing is the understanding that we're dealing with obviously the most complex of all the centers. Not only is it the most complex of all the centers, but if you look at the gates themselves, you'll see that they run in a band throughout the quarter of civilization. In other words, all of these aspects are in one quarter of the wheel itself. And a quarter civilization, which is all about the establishment and the maintaining of the form principle on the planet. In other words, through the thyroid, in that sense, through the throat, we see the ability to be able to manifest form on the planet. And not only that, but in looking at it, to understand that all of these 11 gates, every single one of them is connected to the same biological function. I mean, it's not like, the heart center, with 4 gates and 4 very distinct biological associations, one for each gate. In other words, the deep complexity of a center that even though it only has 4 gates as compared to the 11 here of the throat center, it has much more complexity at the biological level. The stomach, the heart, the gall system, the T cells. I mean, you look at that and you think, each gate in that sense representing that kind of biological information. And here, just one thing. Just one thing. And it's something to recognize about this unity. This unity can only be found in one thing and one thing only. The unity of that single biological association is found in what we call the voice, or in what we call the way in which language comes out of us. I was fascinated when I first began my own studies of the body graph that human beings had no idea of where their voice came from. It was the first thing that was so clear to me. If you ask any child where their words come from, they will tell you that their words come from their mind. I mean, that's what they'll tell you, because that's the way in which they're conditioned. And yet when you look at the body graph and you look at the potential of voice, and you see the potential of voice in its relationship to mind, only 3 of those 8 gates have words in that sense that are derived from the mind. And it's one of the first things to come to grips with. Anyone who is beginning any kind of study in human design that so often things are just sort of mechanically recognized. In other words, here's the throat, it's got 11 gates, each gate's got a voice. But you know, the thing that is so profound in all of this is to begin to understand what it means to listen to what is your true voice, and to understand where it comes from. I mean, you know, the potential of the 16th voice. You know, that potential comes from the spleen, not from the mind. You know, and when you're a 1648, and you are operating spontaneously on the verbal plane, it is your spleen that is speaking, literally. Literally. It's one of the most difficult things for people with complex authorities. You know, those people that have the G connected to the throat. You know, the self-reflected authority. And everybody says, well, how does that work? You know, how does this work? Okay, it's very simple how it works. It's spontaneous to begin with, and it has to do with the word. You see, anything that's going to be expressed by that throat, anything that's going to be expressed spontaneously by that throat, is going to be language that derives directly from the G center. Directly. And of course, what I always recommend to these people, as an example in a reading, is that, you know, you cannot make up your words in your mind. In other words,